A cloth lies behind glass in an Italian cathedral. An image stares from linen, neither painted nor explained. Faith and science meet at the edges of what can be known. Subscribe if you love Jesus. The relic measures 14 feet 3 inches long and 3 feet 7 inches wide, a length of ancient linen bearing the faint sepia image of a man front and back, head to head. The figure stretches across the cloth as though the fabric had been draped lengthwise over a body. The face is serene, eyes closed, features composed in death or sleep. The body shows marks consistent with crucifixion, wounds in the wrists and feet, lacerations across the back and shoulders, a piercing in the side. For centuries, millions have believed this cloth wrapped the body of Jesus of Nazareth after his execution on Golgotha. For decades, scientists have studied it with tools ranging from spectroscopy to carbon dating, seeking answers that remain elusive. The question the shroud poses is not whether faith requires proof. It does not. But whether this particular object, venerated and contested, illuminates or obscures the boundary between belief and evidence. The shroud's documented history begins in the mid-14th century, though tradition and contested sources suggest a longer, more shadowy past. The first undisputed reference appears in 1534, when the cloth was damaged by fire in the Sainte-Chapelle in Chambéry. France molten silver from the reliquary burned through the folded linen, leaving symmetrical scorch marks. Poor Clare nuns repaired the damage with patches, stitching cloth over the burned sections. In 1578, the shroud was transferred to Turin, where it has remained ever since, housed in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. But references to a burial shroud bearing Christ's image appear much earlier in Christian tradition. The Gospels mention burial cloths. John's Gospel specifically describes multiple cloths found in the empty tomb, linen wrappings and a separate face cloth. Early Christian writings reference an image of Christ not made by human hands, though whether these accounts refer to the Turin shroud remains debated. Some scholars trace the cloth to the image of Edessa, a relic venerated in the Byzantine Empire and later lost during the Crusades. Others argue the shroud appeared suddenly in 14th century France with no credible provenance, suggesting medieval forgery. The image itself defies simple categorization. It is not a painting. Microscopic analysis shows no evidence of pigment, brush strokes, or binders typically found in medieval art. The color resides in the topmost fibers of the linen, penetrating no deeper than the thickness of a cell wall. The image is a negative, meaning the dark and light values are reversed, a fact discovered only in 1898 when Secondo Pia photographed the shroud and found that the photographic negative revealed a clearer, more detailed positive image. This negative quality was unknown in art until the invention of photography, making it an unlikely feature for a medieval forger to include. The wound patterns visible on the shroud correspond with Roman crucifixion practices. The nail wounds appear in the wrists rather than the palms, consistent with historical understanding of crucifixion mechanics. Medieval art invariably depicted nails through the palms, following tradition rather than historical accuracy. The scourge marks across the back and legs match the pattern of a Roman flagrum, a whip tipped with lead balls and bone fragments. The wound in the side aligns with the Gospel of John's account of a spear thrust to confirm death. Forensic pathologists who have examined the shroud note that the bloodstains appear consistent with actual blood flow from a crucified body, including post-mortem bleeding. In 1978, the Shroud of Turin research project brought together an international team of scientists to conduct the most comprehensive analysis to date. For 5 continuous days, They examined the cloth using infrared thermography, ultraviolet fluorescence, X-ray fluorescence, and microscopic photography. Their findings were published in peer-reviewed journals over the following decade. The team concluded that the image was not painted, printed, or applied by any known artistic technique. They found traces of blood confirmed through multiple tests, including immunological assays. The mechanism of image formation remained unexplained. Then, in 1988, came the carbon dating results that seemed to settle the question. 3 laboratories, Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona, independently tested samples of the shroud using radiocarbon dating. All 3 laboratories reached similar conclusions. The linen dated to between 1260 and 1390, firmly placing it in the medieval period. The announcement made international headlines. The Vatican accepted the results. Skeptics declared the matter closed. The shroud was a medieval forgery, scientifically proven. But the story did not end. In the years following the carbon dating, questions emerged about the methodology and the samples tested. The samples had been taken from a single corner of the shroud, an area later shown to be contaminated by medieval repairs, and handling chemical analysis revealed that the tested area contained cotton fibers interwoven with the linen, suggesting repair work that could have introduced newer material. The fire of 1534 and subsequent restoration had added foreign material to portions of the cloth. Some scientists argued that bacterial and fungal contamination, combined with centuries of handling and exposure, could have skewed the carbon dating results toward a more recent date. In 2005, Raymond Rogers, a chemist who had participated in the 1978 STIRP investigation, published a peer-reviewed analysis demonstrating that the sample used for carbon dating came from a medieval reweave, a patch cleverly integrated into the original cloth, but composed of different material. Rogers's work, published in the journal Thermochimica Acta, suggested the carbon dating had tested the wrong section of the shroud. His analysis of fibers from the main body of the cloth indicated a date consistent with the 1st century. Though his findings remain contested within the scientific community, subsequent studies have attempted to date the shroud through other means. Pollen analysis conducted by Swiss criminologist Max Frey identified pollen species from plants native to ancient Palestine, suggesting the cloth spent time in that region. Textile experts have noted that the weave pattern, a 3-to-1 herringbone twill, was common in the ancient Near East. Traces of calcium carbonate in the linen match the mineralogical signature of limestone found in Jerusalem. None of these findings constitute proof, but they complicate the narrative of straightforward medieval forgery. The blood on the shroud presents its own mysteries. In 2015, forensic scientists published analyses confirming the presence of human blood, including both arterial and venous flow patterns. The blood type, determined through multiple independent tests, is AB positive, relatively rare in European populations, but more common in Middle Eastern populations. Contemporary research has identified bilirubin in the bloodstains, a compound present in elevated levels in blood from trauma victims. The presence of creatinine particles, found in the blood of torture victims, adds another layer of consistency with the Passion narrative. In 2017, Italian researchers used modern forensic techniques to analyze the bloodstain patterns, concluding that the flows were consistent with gravity acting on a body in various positions during and after crucifixion. However, their findings were disputed by other forensic experts who argued the patterns were inconsistent in ways that suggested artistic creation rather than natural flow. The debate continues in academic journals, each study provoking responses, rebuttals, and further investigation. One of the most persistent questions concerns image formation. How was the image placed on the cloth? No medieval artistic technique explains it. No modern technique has successfully replicated all its features. The superficial nature of the coloration, the negative quality, the lack of directionality in the image, the three-dimensional information encoded in the varying intensities of the stain. Hypotheses range from natural chemical processes related to decomposition to more exotic theories involving radiation bursts or corona discharge at the moment of resurrection. In 2011, Italian scientists attempted to reproduce the shroud's image using ultraviolet lasers, achieving partial success in creating discoloration similar to that found on the cloth. Their work suggested that only an extremely brief, intense burst of energy could create the observed pattern. The implications were left unstated but obvious. Such energy would have been unavailable in medieval times. Critics noted that the reproduction, while similar, did not perfectly match the original and required modern technology no forger could have possessed. The shroud has been exhibited publicly only 5 times since 2000. In 2000, 2010, 2013, 2015, and 2025. Each exposition draws millions of pilgrims and tourists. Lines stretch for hours. People stand in silence before the climate-controlled case, gazing at the faint image barely visible to the naked eye. Some weep, some pray. Others simply look, trying to parse what they see, trying to decide what they believe. The Catholic Church has never officially declared the shroud authentic. Its position is careful, diplomatic. The shroud is a powerful icon worthy of veneration regardless of its age or origin. Pope John Paul II called it a mirror of the gospel. Pope Benedict XVI described it as an icon written in blood. Pope Francis has emphasized its value as an object of contemplation that draws believers toward the mystery of Christ's suffering. The Church neither affirms nor denies authenticity, leaving the question open for faith and science to explore without interference. Scholars debate whether proof matters. For believers, the shroud's authenticity does not rest on carbon dating or pollen analysis. Faith does not require relics. Christianity survived its first 3 centuries without physical evidence, sustained by testimony and martyrdom. The resurrection is not validated by a burial cloth, but by the transformation of frightened disciples into witnesses willing to die for what they had seen. The shroud, authentic or not, points toward the passion it depicts. Its value lies in its power to evoke meditation on suffering, death, and the hope of resurrection. Yet the scientific questions persist because the object itself invites investigation. The shroud is not merely a symbol, but a physical artifact that can be tested, measured, and analyzed. If it is a forgery, understanding how it was created would be a significant achievement in art history and medieval studies. If it is authentic, it represents an unprecedented connection to the historical Jesus, a tangible link to the central event of Christian faith. The stakes are high enough that inquiry continues despite obstacles, controversies, and inconclusive results. Recent advances in digital imaging and forensic analysis have revealed details invisible to earlier researchers. 3-dimensional mapping of the image has shown that the intensity of the discoloration correlates with the distance between cloth and body, as though the image recorded depth information. This feature, first discovered in the 1970s, has been confirmed and refined with modern technology. No artistic technique, medieval or modern, naturally produces this effect. Artists work in 2 dimensions, not 3. The correlation suggests a formation process involving radiation or vapor emanating from the body beneath the cloth. Bloodstain pattern analysis has grown more sophisticated, allowing researchers to model the position of the body when various wounds were inflicted and when blood flowed, Some findings support the Gospel's account with striking precision. Others raise questions about inconsistencies that suggest staging or manipulation. The debate turns on technical minutiae, the angle of flow, the distinction between antemortem and postmortem bleeding, the effects of gravity on blood soaked into linen. Skeptics point to the convenient absence of documentation before the 14th century, the profusion of false relics during the medieval period, and the financial incentives for creating objects of pilgrimage. They note that the Bishop of Troyes, Pierre d'Arcis, denounced the shroud as a forgery in 1389, claiming that his predecessor had discovered the artist who painted it. The letter to the Pope from d'Arcis has survived, though the artist's name and the specifics of the investigation have not. Defenders of authenticity argue that d'Arcis had political and financial motives for attacking the relic, which was drawing pilgrims away from his cathedral. The truth remains contested territory, where evidence accumulates but does not converge toward consensus. For every study suggesting authenticity, another raises doubts for every argument from history, a counter-argument from science. The shroud occupies a space where disciplines intersect but do not align, where the tools of inquiry produce results that deepen rather than resolve the mystery. What can be said with certainty is limited. The shroud exists. It bears an image that defies complete explanation. It shows marks consistent with crucifixion, as practiced by Romans in the 1st century. It has been venerated for centuries. It has inspired devotion, art, scholarship, and controversy. It has been tested with some of the most sophisticated scientific instruments available, yet fundamental questions about its origin and nature remain unanswered. The shroud does not prove the resurrection. Even if authenticated as 1st century, even if shown to have wrapped the body of a crucified man from ancient Palestine, it would only confirm a burial, not what happened afterward. The empty tomb in the Gospels is empty. The cloths left behind are evidence of absence, not presence. Faith rests not on relics, but on testimony, on the encounter between the risen Christ and his followers, on the transformation that testimony produced in history. Yet the shroud persists in imagination and inquiry, a silent witness that speaks without words, challenges without arguments, provokes without demanding. It lies behind glass in Turin, viewed by millions, studied by hundreds, understood by none completely. It is an icon, an enigma, a question mark woven into linen, bearing an image that may be art or miracle, forgery or testimony, medieval creation or ancient witness. The latest science has not closed the case. The latest history has not resolved the contradictions. What remains is the image itself, faint, haunting, ambiguous, and the human impulse to seek meaning in it, to find in a piece of ancient cloth some connection to the events that birthed a faith, to the man who died and whose followers claimed he rose, to the mystery at the heart of belief where proof ends and trust begins. The Shroud of Turin waits behind its glass, silent in the way all relics are silent, speaking only to those who bring to it questions they cannot answer elsewhere, faith that seeks understanding, or curiosity that will not rest until mystery yields, if it ever does, to truth.